clear. Um, on this video, I'm gonna make it short because I'm studying. I got my study stuff here. So just to let you know, this video is about how I am learning slash learned Spanish in the streets and not in the classroom. Uh, I learned my journey of learning Spanish, I guess, started in the classroom, but most of my real world experience and knowledge of speaking Spanish, the Spanish that I do know, I'm not fluent, but I understand enough of Spanish and I could speak enough of it to where I'm on my way to being intermediate. I'm tracking my progress live like right now, but estoy aprendiendo español en la calle, no en clase. I learned Spanish like really in the street, like literally like traveling. So I started my journey of learning Spanish, I would say a few years ago. I was introduced to it. That's how I would put it. I was introduced to Spanish a few years ago, and about uh after I was introduced to Spanish, I came to the conclusion that I was like, man, I want to understand it, but they talk so fast. My vocabulary game really wasn't up, but I just stuck with it. So as I talked about previously on my channel, I traveled to Colombia in 2021, 2020, 2021. I traveled to Colombia, and that was the first Spanish speaking country I had ever been to. And this was before like a lot of Americans started going over there. I went to Cartagena. I didn't know anything about like this was like the tail end of COVID. I didn't know anything about like Passport Bros. It wasn't related to that or anything like that. When I went to Colombia, my dad had passed away and I wanted a change of scenery. And it was a great experience. I really had a blast. And then after that, a lot of other people started making content about going to Latin America. And I started noticing that it was a huge shift in my home country of the United States, Estados Unidos, and internationally. So in the last few years, immigration has been really big topic and a reality in the United States. While the United States have always had a lot of people migrating to our country, the last I would say 8 years since since like 2016, it's been a lot of foreigners coming to the United States from Latin America. So a lot of our cities we were having to learn how to converse with the Latinos that was migrating to our cities. Now, I live in Houston, so I'm not from Houston. I'm from Louisiana, but in Houston, Texas, it's always been a lot of Spanish speakers, mainly from Mexico. But Houston is one of those cities. It's kind of like a Miami now, where you have Latinos from every demographic in Latin America. And so that's how my Spanish journey started. The reason I didn't learn Spanish in a classroom was it really wasn't an option. I didn't really have a lot of time to just say, "Hey, I'm going to take a class and I'm going to learn Spanish." It really didn't work like that because I was an adult and I was moving around working and stuff. So I didn't have that time. And I think that that's actually beneficial. Like you got to think about kids. How do kids learn the language? How do they learn anything? Yeah, they learn in classroom settings, but they get exposure by being in the environment where they are practicing. And with the technology we have now, we can do that. So my friend Gino, I met him in Colombia, and I had paid for a course called Rocket Language, and I paid for it was like $300. I paid for the beginner and intermediate course, and I was practicing it, and I learned how to say a few things on there. But the problem I was having with the site, it was hard for me to memorize what to say or when to say it. And that's why I say I learned it in the streets because when I would went to Colombia, that course helped me a lot, even though it's kind of like a crash course. It's a very good program, but it was hard to learn everything I needed to learn on that site because it teaches you basics and textbook related stuff, but just like in the United States, the West Coast people have different slang and they talk a certain way. The East Coast people have a certain slang. Us from the South, we talk a certain way. Depending on what city or state you're from in the South, we speak a certain type of way. So it was very challenging. And when I was in Colombia, since I was immersed in it, it was all around me. I really started picking up the language in like the first like 2 weeks of me being there, and I could ask Gino, a native speaker who spoke English as well, and ask him like, "Hey, how do you say this? How do you say this?" And from experiences like that is how I started learning Spanish. Fast forward a year or two later, I went to Puerto Rico. Now, yeah, it's a United States territory, guys. Because every time I say this, people always comment on my videos or tell me in person, yeah, but Puerto Rico is a part of the United States. Unless you've been to Puerto Rico, you probably don't understand what I'm about to say. But Puerto Rico is is not like it is an American territory, but Spanish is the dominant language spoken there. I mean, if you just listen to Osuna or different artists and reggaeton from Puerto Rico, you know, uh Bad Bunny and people like that, you would know like Spanish is the first language of Puerto Rico and English is the second language. So when I went there, people that spoke English, in my opinion, was like the younger people and stuff like that. But a lot of the older people just still spoke Spanish. So that's when I really had an experience where I felt frozen because I couldn't communicate. I couldn't tell the taxi driver where I wanted to go. I couldn't, and I had my son with me too. I had my son with me when I took him to Puerto Rico, but we had a blast in Puerto Rico. I love Puerto Rico. Can't wait to go back. Then I started dating a girl. I started internet dating, and I started dating this girl named Delanise, who I still date today, and my amour. So I was on the website where I was internet dating, and we uh we started we started communicating. She was like, "Man, you going to all of these Spanish speaking countries? Like, why don't you why don't you come here? Like, you know what I mean?" I was like, "You know what? You're right. How about I go there?" So I went to Cuba. That's where she's from. And so since then I've been to Cuba about 4 or 5 times. And I would say communicating with her has really improved my Spanish. Like the other day, yesterday actually, I logged into Rocket Language. And I hadn't been on this site in a very long time. And I was going through like the beginner basic stuff, and I was like, man, I learned all of this stuff literally in the streets. Like I didn't really learn this stuff on the program. I learned this stuff communicating with people in the real world. So what I would tell people if they want to learn another language is one, guys, you have the internet. This is a tool that's so powerful because you could almost completely spend multiple hours in that in whatever your target language is. Secondly, memorize phrases instead of words. I think one of the problems I have with the way Spanish is taught is like they teach you like apps like Duolingo and stuff like that. I'm not dissing it. I'm not being derogatory when I say this, but I don't think you're really going to learn. You could learn some good things in it. It's a good tool, but it can't be your primary tool. So like I told Delanice yesterday, I was like, I thank you. I was like, I really want to thank you because she was so patient with me when I would speak just horrible dialect, horrible sentence structure, couldn't get my words out, it didn't even sound intelligible. I remember I was in Colombia and I didn't even know how to say "Me llamo Brian, soy del Estados Unidos." That's how bad my Spanish was. I couldn't even say my name is Brian and I'm from the United States. When I think about how I don't even know how I was able to even. um like do that. Like I was in Colombia, can't speak any Spanish. The only thing I could say, I could say a few things, and the things that I learned to say were phrases. You know, puedo sacar su foto. Me llamo Brian. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Estoy bien. Gracias. Et tú? Like simple stuff like that. Introduction stuff, but I couldn't really express myself, like how I'm feeling, what it's like back home, what do you like to do, where do you work, what are your interests. You know, I couldn't like that's when you really start to get into the conversation, when it's like you could express how you feel and what you're thinking in the other language, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to when you're learning the language, you're not going to speak it the same way that you would your native language. But one thing I learned, and I thank Delanice and Gino and also my cousin Jonathan. So my cousin Jonathan, I would consider him intermediate. Like he's been learning Spanish for a few years now, and he's like been practicing. I just now, guys, like about 2 years ago, started really practicing Spanish, and I would say this year is the year I decided that I was really going to put in a lot of hours. Now, previously, I was learning it, but I was learning it on the go when I had time here and there. It wasn't a priority because at the time I was learning different things. I was uh I was dabbling in insurance, real estate. I was working on different licenses. I was taking state standardized testing. I was already studying other things business related. I didn't really have a lot of time to study towards like otro idioma, you know. And so my cousin Jonathan, you know, he would speak to me in Spanish, and like, you know, I could tell like I was like, man, and I was traveling to places and I still wasn't picking it up. And so I was like, man, I was like, I really want to get like my cousin John and start learning more. So one day I just like started asking him like, man, how like what do you do to study? Like how are you learning this? He sent me phrases like right now. I purchased this. This is a stack of flashcards. And even this, I purchased this a year ago, guys. And I was so busy. I was like, man, eventually I'm gonna get to it. So I cracked this open not too long ago, and a lot of the phrases that I was practicing, Delanice had already taught me this. So I was like, damn, my girl, she taught me a lot of these phrases already. So that's when my confidence started getting up. And so like recently what I've been doing, and I'm still in the beginner stages, okay guys, like don't come for me. Like I'm not fluent. I'm going to repeat that 3 times. I'm still learning. Estoy aprendiendo. Todavía estoy aprendiendo. I'm still learning, okay? So don't come for me talking about, oh, woody whoop, like I'm still learning. Todavía uh estoy aprendiendo. Like chill out. You know what I'm saying? Like relax. I'm still learning. I get that. I'm not is not but you gotta understand, guys, when you're an American, English is so dominant here. The average American doesn't really come into contact with enough Spanish speakers long term, like have real relationships with, friendships with, to to become immersed in the language. So the average American could probably say some things in Spanish, like numbers or like basic numbers 1 through 10, basic greetings, but they can't really express themselves because, as you know, the history of the United States is a very divided country. You know, you got like whites over here, blacks over here, Latinos over here, Asians over here. Like they call it a melting pot, but it's not like A few cities are actually a melting pot, but the majority of my country is not really a melting pot. It's very divided. You could just look on the news and see that I'm not, once again, being divisive by saying that. I'm just giving you the real. So we never had an opportunity to really learn Spanish. And then when we took Spanish in school, the Spanish we got in school was computer based, and once again, it lacked that human interaction. So a lot of Americans, we were kind of taught that you don't really. It's good to know another language, but it's not necessary. But I would say that things have changed because of immigration and so many people traveling to the United States. I'm gonna have to put my jacket on, guys. I'm feeling kind of chilly. One second. Yo, yo necesito my chaqueto. Shoot, I felt che frío. Shit. Whew. So, oh, that feels much better. Whew. Bien. So, so that's really it. And so, like, one of the top three reasons I wanted to learn Spanish, guys, and how I've been learning in the streets is like this. Like, this is what I mean by the streets, like the real world. Like the world is your classroom. I think we got to get rid of the stigma that, especially in the United States, man. Like we got to pay thousands of dollars to get education, and we're trying to get certifications and certificates to prove that we know stuff to get a job. Most Americans, especially, they don't want to learn anything. And I can say this because I'm an American. Most Americans, we think that if it's not going to put some money in our pockets, if we're not going to get an immediate payment for it, why should I be doing it? We don't really get to have hobbies or do things, the average American, because we're so busy. And that's another thing. A lot of people feel like they don't have time. So if you're going to learn a target language, a new language, take 30 minutes out of your day, an hour out of your day. I remember Gino told me, he was like, Brian, if you study for 1 hour a day, he was like, at the end of the year, you will be much better. Now imagine if a person studied 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, how good they would be at whatever they're trying to learn a year from now, 2 years from now. It's like compounding interest. You're adding time. Even when it seems like you're not as good at it, you're adding to it, you're adding to it until eventually people look up. It's like, wow, how did you get so good at that? And it's like, I just kept stacking days. I heard LeBron James say that. He was like, just keep stacking days. That's it, guys. Stack days. When you're working on, let's say, saving money, what do? You stack days. You save a little bit today. 2 weeks come, you save a little bit more. You look up, you keep doing that. In 5 years, now you got a decent amount of money or a lot of money or an investment account that has grown. It's the same thing. So we got to learn to use the world as our stepping stone to learn things. And when I would go to Cuba, that's the country I've been to the most, visiting Delanice, I was forced to learn Spanish. When I would go to Colombia or communicate with Gino or talk to my cousin John, because he would always speak Spanish to me, being when a lot of people learn second and third languages because actually they're forced to. When you're forced to communicate, you got to think as humans, we are programmed to want to understand things. So when we don't understand things, that's actually like tough on us. So when you're able, to get past like, I sound funny, oh, I messed up, and because people are going to make fun of you, people are going to try to shame you or say like you sound funny because why? They've been practicing it and longer than you. They've been speaking it their whole life. People like to kind of make other people feel small to make themselves feel better. But what people can also respect is when you don't give up, when you keep going, when they made fun of you, but then a year or two pass and now you're way better. It's like, well, now you can't make fun of me anymore, you know? And what I also think about is I wanted to learn Spanish to communicate better with the girl I was dating. I wanted to learn Spanish because it was so widely spoken in my environment. Even like in the like I said, a lot of people was migrating and immigrating to the United States. I'm like, man, Spanish is so huge and it's so crazy that it's literally the second most common language spoken on this side of the ocean. And so many Americans can't even understand what these people are saying. Basic stuff. Like I was like, man, I need to like get my Spanish game up. Then third, I started thinking, how would my life be if I was completely fluent and I could live in a Spanish nation? I could live in a place where Spanish was the spoken language and I could communicate effectively. Like how much more I would be able to enjoy traveling or living abroad. And that's another thing. Traveling to these places made me want to spend more time overseas. Like, you know, of course, the cost of living compared to the U.S. is for an American is a little bit, cheaper. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I could just go to Colombia or go overseas and uh take a month off, take 2 months off, take 6 months off, and just do something that I actually want to do, you know. And so I even thought about teaching English overseas. And I was like, man, but maybe I should learn more Spanish so, if I teach English, it would be easier to do it. And so it's a lot of opportunities. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a lot of opportunities. Just like it's opportunities for them if they could speak English, it's opportunities for us if we could speak Spanish on a fluent level. Not just opportunities like with the government per se, but you could create your own opportunities. So that's been my video. My name is Brian. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't, you can subscribe, like. I try to keep my videos informative, constructive. Um, I try to use my time in a constructive manner. I talked about world events, but I do dabble in education, economics, labor law, politics, religion, history, things like that, things that we experience as humans. And I like to talk about the human experience. And also, I would say, since learning Spanish, I have a greater understanding and admiration for a lot of like the what the different Spanish speakers have gone through in their history, like the Taino and the Native Americans and the Mexicans, Colombians, and a lot of Americans. Like maybe it's our school system. We're very not well versed in like other people's history, so we don't know anything that's really like going on in Latin America. Like we're very like I'm telling you, the average American, if it's not in English, we have no reference point to it. We're kind of speaking one language is like almost like being landlocked. Like you can own, but English is so widely spoken to where we can get away with it. But I think the things are changing. So that's been my video. Hit the like, share, subscribe. Peace.